Greetings from the Minnesota Catholic Conference. I'm Ryan Hamilton, Government Relations Associate for the Minnesota Catholic Conference. And today's stop on our Fall Faithful Citizenship Tour brings us to beautiful Stillwater, Minnesota, and the lovely library here. And I've caught up with Mr. Mark Bishofsky, and Mark is running, he's campaigning for an opportunity to represent District 33B as a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives. And so let's jump right in and get to know our candidate. Mark, what motivated you to pursue this avenue of service? Why are you running for the state legislature?
Well, I've been a compassionate health care giver for 23, going on 24 years of my life. And that was all interrupted due to, if I may say, some draconian in my government overreach I felt with locking us out of our churches, locking our children out of schools, covering their faces. Everything I saw happening inside the hospital was so alarming to me that I felt concerned about what the future might look like for my 3 little boys at home, and didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up resigning my career, 23-year-long career as a respiratory therapist, kind of in an act of non-compliance, and formed an organization called Stop the Mandate Minnesota, trying to fight against and protest against government overreach, really. The lockdowns, leaving these big box stores open, but destroying so many small businesses and destroying our children's education and livelihoods. And so one thing led to another. I was very successful in my mission to advocate for so many people who were concerned, and the organization Stop the Mandate got so big. Some good people from the GOP came to me, asked me to run. And being someone who's been kind of a pessimist, skeptic towards politics most of my life, my first reaction was, not sure I want to do that, but in fact, it's kind of ironic. So at the day before I had to make a decision in order to run, I was at church, and the sermon for that day happened to be Esther 4:14, which who knows that you were chosen for this royal position in such a time as this, and the entire sermon was about how you shouldn't be afraid to take risks and to go for it, essentially. And my wife and I looked at one another and said, there's your answer. So decided to do it, and here I am, regular guy.
Great. We understand that door knocking is a big part of campaigning for this type of elected office. What are you hearing from voters at the doors, and how does that align with what you hope to accomplish as a member of the legislature?
Well, mostly the number one issue I'm hearing at the doors right now is people are struggling to put gas in the tank, food on the table. Inflation is the number one issue. Crime is a close second, and education is a big issue as well. We've seen such a rapid decline in test scores, and those are all things that are important to me. And my intention to my first goal after I win will not be to get reelected. My goal as a legislator will be to be a voice for the people that have brought me here. And so I want, my overall big goal and mission, I believe in less government power, decrease the scope, size of government, and increase liberty. And my slogan is faith, family, community. And again, I intend to help people with inflation. I'd like to see getting rid of the taxation of our Social Security benefits, lower taxes across the board, take some of the straps of regulation off the free market, and we need to make violent criminals pay for their crimes. So I align with what I'm hearing at the door in that way, and it's kind of what I would say about that.
Great. So unlike many advocacy groups, the Catholic Church's voice does not fit neatly into political distinctions. We do not speak as Republicans, nor do we speak as Democrats, nor are we a single issue advocacy group. We do speak on a broad variety of topics that are considered by our lawmakers in St. Paul. If elected, you will be entering into a highly partisan environment. How do you plan to overcome the partisanship in our policymaking process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honesty and integrity and character, I think, and being forthcoming to my constituency, making sure they understand what is happening at the Capitol and kind of pulling the veil off of what's happening. And I intend to work just as hard knocking doors and dropping literature after I'm elected to make sure that the people know what is happening, to help advise me and to help, I want to be a catalyst between the people. The people should have the power. That was the intention of the Constitution, and good legislation. So I think just by being, very honest and open, accessible, is how I intend to overcome that.
Great. So thanks for giving us some insight about your why and how you want to serve. Let's get into some Q&A about specific issues that are on the minds of Minnesota Catholics, starting with the family. According to Catholic social doctrine, the family is the foundational building block of society. Now, this view runs contrary to modern secular society, which prioritizes the individual and the state. Child rearing has never been easy nor cheap, and it has only become more arduous as the cost of living, things like transportation, consumer goods, healthcare, housing, have all skyrocketed. There seems to be a growing perception that marriage and parenthood are lifestyle choices rather than fundamental vocations. And those perceptions are substantiated by the numbers. We're seeing steady declines in marriage rates and family formation amongst the middle and working classes. From a big picture perspective, what are some strategies that we can employ to elevate the status of the family in our politics, in our media, and in our culture? How can society best support parents in their roles and responsibilities?
That's a broad question. It's a difficult one. I know I don't have all the answers to that, but again, faith, family, and community, I believe in that order of importance. As far as helping families through these difficult economic times, tax credits for your kids, and maybe some kind of we see statistically that children from homes where there's a mother and a father do better in school. So how do we find ways to keep families, traditional family values are important, I believe, and could there be a tax credit or something, to keep the family intact? I don't know, and again, I don't have the answers, and I intend to seek advice in those areas to see what we can best do. But I do agree that having a mother and a father in the home is very important, and then also, ways for them to be able to afford food, gas, transportation are things that need to be addressed.
Sure. So, and getting more specific, what role does the legislature play in creating the economic conditions for families, particularly those with minor children, to thrive? You mentioned child tax credits. Any other ideas on that, on the economic conditions for families?
Yeah, that would be, I think, a big one. I think education ties into there as well, where I don't know if I want to see school vouchers or just tax credits for school, like the money follows the student, but to keep the government's fingers off of it, tax credits. So if I chose to send my children to a private school, I would get those tax credits for that. But improving education for our future, very important. And again, to me, we need to stimulate the economy for everyone. And I'm a free market guy. And I just believe that when you take some of these, when you lower some taxes, Social Security, like I said, the taxation of that needs to go. And I think we need to lower our income tax drastically. We need to give back the entire surplus to the people so that they can get through these trying times.
Sure, thanks. So in conjunction with advocating for policies that promote family formation, our bishops are actively opposed to the legalization, the normalization, and the commercialization of vice activities that have been proven to undermine the family unit. Would you support or oppose legalizing online sports gambling in Minnesota?
I'm not sure about that. I think it's happening. I haven't looked into that enough to see how it would affect people, families, or how it would affect the market. So I really don't have a good answer for you on that one.
And on similar lines, would you support or oppose the legalization and commercialization of recreational marijuana in Minnesota?
Well, that one, I think if it's done right, see, I think I could go on a long time with this. This hits home to me, is I feel like the war on drugs has been a failure. My stepbrother and my cousin are both dead within the last 18, 19 months from drug overdose. And I feel like treating people like criminals is not the best way to serve someone who has a mental health or addiction problem. I think that in some cases you can see that where it's regulated, labeled correctly, and kept out of the hands of children. I don't advocate for the use of marijuana, but I don't like black markets.
Sure.
I think there's so much crime involved, and I don't like to see our police spending so much time on these nonviolent offenses when we have 500% increase in carjackings, over 100% increase in murder. And so that's something I would have to explore.
Yeah, thank you. So motherhood. Catholics hold that life is sacred from conception until natural death, and that people at every stage of life, even those in the womb, should be respected, protected, and loved. Given that, the overturning of Roe v. Wade is not the end, it is just the beginning. Abortion is still legal in our state. Now more than ever, we need to create a policy environment where babies are respected in law and where women are not led to believe that abortion is their only option. How do you think we can best support mothers before, during, and after childbirth?
Well, just sponsored a table at the Options for Women event last week, and I think that is something that, there's nobody more charitable in this country than Christian conservatives. And I think we need to bolster and embolden more organizations like Options for Women to reach out to these moms in a very difficult time in their life. And I think we should also streamline the adoption process so that there is another option. It's so difficult right now and it's expensive to adopt. So, but yeah, I feel like the miracle happens at conception. It's never a clump of cells. All these semantics they try to use. So, yeah, I think these charities, we need to make sure that there are more of them. I think educating the women that there's a choice before the pregnancy, and it's a tough one right now. It's such a difficult issue because that's the biggest resistance from the left right now, but we need to save more babies, period.
We live in an age of highly advanced medical knowledge that has enabled us to significantly extend life. At the same time, such progress has enabled a throwaway culture, such as the legalization of physician-assisted suicide, which devalues people who most deserve our compassion, those with disabilities, the elderly, and low-income individuals. As Catholics, physician-assisted suicide is contrary to the dignity of the human person. Legalization of physician-assisted suicide unnaturally hastens death when it is thought that the person's life no longer has meaning or purpose. Would you consider supporting our efforts to prioritize compassionate alternatives to physician-assisted suicide, such as hospice and palliative care, and help us enact policies that promote accessible, holistic, and dignified end-of-life care?
Yes, I absolutely would, and that's something that I'm familiar with, being a respiratory therapist, and especially during the COVID crisis, when families couldn't be with their loved ones as they were sick and dying. I quite literally held the hands of many folks as they went to Jesus, took their last breath. And as it says on my website, I'm a defender of life from conception to natural death.
Great, thank you. And our final question. Many children dealing with education. Many children in low-income families are trapped in underperforming schools as families are not able to choose the school that meets their child's needs. How do you feel about the principle that all parents should be given a choice to send their children to whatever school meets their family's needs, and that educational resources, tax dollars, should follow the student rather than bureaucratic systems?
Absolutely 100%. And how, like I said earlier, how we do that, whether it's vouchers or credits, absolutely. Parents need a choice, they need a voice, and these children need to have access to education that is right for them, meets their needs. So yes, 100%. In fact, I homeschool my children right now, and I would like to have the option to private school at some point. So 100%.
Mark Bishofsky, folks, candidate for House District 33B. Mark, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for this opportunity for us to get to know you and about your campaign, and for our folks to inform their vote down in this district.
Thank you. God bless.